As some of you may know, I like to start my videos with a map, so today we'll start with a map. There it is. You'll notice at the top there's a legend that shows you the difficulty of the various roads and where they are. You'll also notice there are no roads on this map that aren't paved. So let's get started. This video is going to be about riding in the Black Hills. We get a lot of riders out here in the summertime. We do get about 3 million tourists. A lot of people are used to riding in cities and urban areas and flatlands and things like that. So when they get out here, they don't realize there's a lot of special aspects to riding. And I'm going to touch on a few of those, mostly about safety. A few things that you have to look out for here that you might not have to watch for in the city. By and large, the riding here is going to be a lot safer than riding in an urban area, say where I sometimes ride, Minneapolis, St. Paul, where you have a lot of different elements that you have to worry about. Here, the riding is more free. You don't have as much to worry about, but the things you do need to worry about are a little bit different. And that's what I plan on touching on in this video. We're going to look at what you can expect, what you need to watch out for, and a little bit about riding in the Black Hills in the summertime, particularly during the Sturgis Motorcycle Rally. So with that in mind, let's get started here. Okay, the first thing you're going to notice about the Black Hills is there's lots of curvy roads. There's a few roads that are really, open, broad curves, really nice riding roads. Van Oker Canyon Road is the one that comes to mind. But then there's other roads that are sharp hairpin turns and steep and sometimes in summer clogged with very slow moving or careless tourists. And I think the first thing we need to consider is the tourists, because they may not be bad drivers in and of themselves, but when they get out here, you have to understand that many of the tourists are on unfamiliar roads. They're looking at the scenery. They're distracted by trying to find out where they're going. They're probably lost or looking for a motel or a restaurant or an attraction or something. And the tourists, by and large, tend to be distracted. Now, those of us who live here kind of get used to that, and we have descriptions for them that aren't always very nice. But generally, we like tourists, and we're happy to see them. But they can be challenging if you're on a motorcycle, because a tourist may not see you, and they may act in a way that's careless, or that seems careless. But if you've ever traveled to a foreign place, and you'll be a foreigner, a tourist here too, probably, if you are, then you'll know what I'm talking about, where you're trying to, find your way, look for a certain attraction, and maybe be a little bit lost. So that's something to keep in mind. And what that means is they'll they may not be motorcycle aware to begin with, and then on top of that, they may do sudden stops, or sudden turns, or pull out in front of you, or suddenly slow down to look at something. This can happen in what would seem like an ordinary open road where you don't have anything to worry about. For instance, if you're in Custer State Park and a tourist suddenly sees an antelope or a buffalo or a turkey or something alongside the road, they're very likely to slam on their brakes. And you as a rider need to be aware that this can happen at any time. So always follow good practice, and that means following at a distance. And there's another good reason for that, is these roads whenever it rains, it's very common for small pebbles and rocks to wash over the roads. And if you're following right behind somebody, you may not see this stuff on the road, and you know, it'll pop up on you before you have a time to really react. So that's another thing to keep in mind when you're out here. But basically, the big risk you're going to face is other drivers, and that's because almost everybody in the summertime is unfamiliar with the roads and the area and everything else. Okay. Another thing you got to watch out for is wildlife, and I mentioned this just briefly, but there's a lot of wildlife in the Black Hills, and your worst risk is going to be deer. Particularly in the early morning or late afternoon and early evening hours, deer tend to come up near the road, and this seems to be worse in the springtime when there's a lot of new fawns or yearlings that don't quite know about roads yet, and they can dart out ahead of you at any time. But you can also worry about things like woodchucks, turkeys, and of course, if you're in the park, buffalo. I know I was riding with a group at one time. We were kind of going through the wildlife loop in Custer Park. We were making really nice time. We might have been exceeding the speed limit. We came up over the hill, and there's this big bull buffalo standing right in the middle of the road. Well, the first rider swerved to avoid the buffalo because it was just there suddenly. And the rider behind him swerved to avoid the first rider, and the third rider almost high-sided because the first two riders were scrambled all over the road, slamming on their brakes and everything else. And I was the fourth rider. I was far enough back that I could see what was happening. I didn't have my camera on at the time. I wished I had, because it would have been a perfect example of what you need to watch out for with wildlife on the road. So that's something you always bear in mind, and when you come up on these blind intersections, you don't know. And in an area like this, you'll notice that we cross cattle guards now and then, and it'll say livestock at large. Well, that means that you could find a big cow in the road, or a whole herd on the road, and be forced to come to a stop. So that's domestic animals as well as the wildlife that you're likely to find. Okay, the other thing is, if you're a flatlander, and we call people from Iowa flatlanders because they're not really used to the curvy roads or anything, so they'll come up and they'll see a curve and maybe overshoot it, maybe go a little fast through it. But the big sin is carving a curve, where you come up to a blind curve and you crowd the middle line or the center line. That is really, really dangerous, because you're likely to find, if it's a blind curve, there might be somebody coming around from the other side, and even if it's a right turn for him, he might be clear out on the, straddling the center line. So if you're right on the center line or close to it, this guy coming the other direction could wipe you out. So good advice is to take these curves slower, and if they're blind, keep well into your lane. If that means following the right track, so be it. Because it's not that hard to do. It takes a little practice. We all want to cut them off. We all want to carve those curves and get the speed up and everything else. But if you're at risk of having an oncoming driver in your lane, it's well worthwhile to keep to the right as far as possible. Yeah, there's a couple guys, and I'm going to wave at them. How you doing there, guy? Hey, how are you? It's a nice couple. Okay. All right, Harleys. Harleys are real popular here. Man, everybody's got Harleys. You probably noticed I'm not exactly a Harley man. Used to be. Had Harleys for years. And the first Harley was a 1946 suicide shift foot clutch. many years ago. I haven't been on a Harley since 2008. I finally sold my last Harley then and kind of moved exclusively to BMWs because I really like Beamers. Well, I've had Beamers for years too. Going back to the 1960s was my first Beamer, but anyway, that's a digression. I don't know if I'll include that in this little video or not. Okay. The other thing you need to be aware of is that the roads here have lots of blind hills. You know, you come up like this, you don't know what's over the hill. Curves, you don't know what's around the curve. And unless you're riding with a group and the first guy is giving you lots of lead and maybe has an intercom, you're not going to know what's ahead. So, you know, keep that in mind. Okay, we'll touch some more here. I'm going to have to stop and get a little petrol for my bike. So, I'm going to sign off for now and catch you later. Another thing you want to be aware of in South Dakota, and you'll be quite aware of this if you ride across from the east, is that we're prone to have high winds here. And if you're out in the plains, if you're out, say, by Wall or Mitchell or, you know, any place in between, you're going to have high winds in some direction just about every day. And it's been my experience that almost always these are going to be crosswinds. They'll either be coming from the north or the south, and you'll be traveling east-west. But actually in the hills, there are places where you'll be in a very protected area, and you come into a big rock cut, like this one coming up here. Okay. And you'll see this rock cut, and it'll close out the wind, you know, and you'll be in here, it'll be just really, really nice. Okay. No wind, nothing, no wind. And then you clear the other side, and there can be a really strong wind out of one direction or the other. Now, of course, you're in the video, so you can't feel it, but you might come out from a rock cut like that and see a strong wind. So that's something else to bear in mind. But again, if you ride here, by the time you get to the hills, you're going to know everything there is to know about wind, probably. If you trailer out, you might know too. I mean, you can blow those trailers around. Just tootling along here at 50 miles an hour. I'm going to bump it up to 60, maybe 65. This is a particularly dangerous little section here because this reptile gardens over there is an extremely popular attraction. And it's early in the day today, but if you come by here, it's very often that they'll turn out in front of you. And you have to watch them because if they're going to be turning left, they're going to cross that other lane of traffic. And you may not notice them sitting in the parking lot, you know, ready to come out and kill you. But I've seen probably a half dozen accidents here. The results of never saw the accident, but seeing the police and the ambulances picking up motorcycles on that little section there. You know, they put the warnings up and all kinds of stuff, but you know, it doesn't seem to do any good. Here's something else you're going to see on the Black Hills is bikers sharing the road with you. On this road, that's not a big deal, but if you get to some of the narrower hilly roads, you're going to see bikers, bicyclists, and cyclists. It's something to bear in mind. Again, if you're from a city, that's probably a hazard you're well used to. But here you may not be able to pull over and give them enough space. I don't know whether you could or not in a city, but here you may not be able to pull over because of oncoming traffic. And I don't know, I like to be polite. I don't like to go by them and rattle my pipes. Just sometimes I'll just kind of ease by in a high gear so it doesn't make a lot of noise. I've ridden bike too in the past, and I know it can be annoying if you're out there enjoying the tranquility of the hills and somebody comes by on a big Harley with loud pipes and they want to make a point, so they'll try to rattle you with their engine, but there's not a lot of point in doing that. Give them plenty of room. You'll notice that Rapid City isn't actually in the Black Hills. It's just to the east of the Black Hills. It's in the Flatlands. There's a few foothills on the west side of Rapid City, but mostly Rapid City is flat. People come to the Black Hills and say, oh, we stayed in the Black Hills, and where'd you stay? Rapid City. No, you didn't. You want to stay in the Black Hills, you want to stay in some place like Hill City or Keystone or Deadwood, or someplace where you're actually in the hills. Rapid City here is mostly east of the hills. Slow down here. It's a nice quiet Sunday here. Well, there you go. That's my video of the things you need to watch out for in the Black Hills. But as I said, it's mostly safe. It's mostly pretty good riding, as long as you keep a few things in mind, and hope you get here someday. If you like this video, please go ahead and like us, and we'll be putting more videos up about different riding topics in the future. So once again, if you're still with us, thanks. Thanks for coming. Bye.